my honor and my privilege to introduce you Reverend Raymond Anderson, and I have no idea what to say. Who doesn't know who Reverend Raymond is? Do you? You know what? Sometimes I think that when we introduce people, we put them in a kind of a box because we tell what they've done, where they've been. But I think that Reverend Ray is spirit in action. He's love in action. He's wisdom in action. He is humor in action. And you know what? He's fashion in action. I always appreciate that. He knows that. I told him that. He's a teacher and he's a student. And he's an open mind person. And it's always safe to go to Reverend Ray and ask a question. Even that if I feel, or some may feel that it's an uncomfortable question, there is always a place in Reverend Raymond's heart and in his soul to embrace, to meet a person where they are, and then to uplift and to share his vision and his power. So please help me to welcome Reverend Raymond Anderson.
So after an introduction like that, I feel like the bar has been placed very high, and I simply want to sing a song, and let's call it a day, okay? No, okay. So, and Tracy's probably going to mess with me about this, because, you know, very often I bring good morning, everyone. Very often I bring a notebook, and I have stuff, and the stuff is prepared, and then somewhere in there at the last minute, stuff changes, and I very rarely actually say what's on the page. Today is no different. So today's theme, we're talking about power to create change, or power to change, power to evolve, power to whatever, the world. It's a pretty big thing, right? But what is the vision of CSL? Global vision. What is the vision of CSL? Anybody? A world that works for everybody, which I change and I say a world that works for all, because if it works for all the people, but all the animals are like, oh man, then it doesn't really work, right? So we want it to work for everything and everyone. That's a really tall order. Like, that's a lot to really put in there. And if we were to sit down and say, how close are we to actually reaching that? You know how years ago, I don't know if people still do it, but you do a fundraiser and you'd have the little thermometer thing and it would be red. I mean, I may as well match. And you know, the more you put in, the redder it would get because it would go up. I don't know if people still do that. But if we had a thermometer that said a world that works for all here, where would we be? Say it again. Say it again. Somewhere down here. Now, pause for a second and take that in, because I agree with you 100%. Now, who here knows the Science of My magazine? You familiar with the Science of My magazine? Okay, because I'm going to get ready to quiz you. That's the best I could do with my Halloween right now. I didn't get the memo to get a mask and stuff. Anyhow, in the front of the magazine, there are the We Believe statements, our declaration of principles, and one of them references what heaven is, or what we believe about heaven. Anybody in here know what it is? Okay, so it says, we believe that heaven is within, and that we will experience it to the degree that we become conscious of it. So what if we were to take that and apply it to a world that works for all? We believe a world that works for all is heaven on earth, and it will be manifest when we, to the degree that we become conscious of it. And to become conscious of it means we have to become conscious as it. Breathe. Joel Goldsmith says, God expresses God, and that expression appears as you. Dr. Holmes said, whatever you believe about God is true about you. Whatever is true about God is true about you. Dr. Holmes also said that the only God that we would truly, intimately know is the one that we embody. Breathe that in. Because it's calling us to a whole new level of. Now, how does this tie into a world that works for all? How does this tie into a world that works for all and each of us, getting it from where Irina said, way yonder, to manifest. If we were to do the, and don't answer, just breathe this in for yourself. If we were to do the same thermometer for each individual one of us and our lives, we have a thermometer for our relationships, all of our social interactions. Where on the thermometer are we showing that my relationships work? Finances, where on my finances, my ability to steward my finances, our intellect, our spiritual lives, all of these things, if we had a thermometer for each of the aspects of our lives that says we are or we are not succeeding in living our best, doing our best, showing up at our best. And I know I do this every time I come here, and today is no different. If Lynn was to say, Ray, give me an A flat. Ah! Yes, no. What did you say, Tracy? Hey. Ah! Okay, just never mind, Ray, never mind. Jen, could you show him? Right? There's a rubric that we are able to look at to say, this is what an A sharp sounds like. This is what a successful life looks like, feels like, smells like, tastes like. If it walks like a duck, if it quacks like a duck, more than likely it's not a cow. What does it mean for us to walk like, quack like, behave like someone who knows? So Rich mentioned, the phrase, I am that I am. And I don't know if I've mentioned this to you before, but if so, it's a rerun. So years ago, having grown up in Pittsburgh, I have a lot of Jewish friends. And for many of them, I was the only black friend that they had. So I was always being invited over the house just because. For some, it was a novelty, but nonetheless. One time, I'm over a friend's house, and the rabbi is visiting, and we get into a conversation about church, because he's curious about, why do Christians do this, this, and this, when you claim that Yeshua, and, well, you should be following what we, and blah, blah, blah. And one of the examples that he gave was, he said, Moses goes to, and who to tell them, because when I go back, I am that I am, Yod He Vav He. That's the, okay. And the rabbi said, yeah, but you typically translate it as, I am that I am, period. It's more like, I am that which I am, ever becoming more of the truth of my being. You said, what? Ever, open at the top. Is that not why we have that teaching symbol to remind us? I am ever becoming more and more of my true self. What's my true self? The divine, the infinite source that Rich mentioned. We believe that heaven is within to the degree that we become conscious of it. We believe that God is within to the degree that we become conscious of. We believe that love is within to the degree that we become conscious of. We believe that a world that works for all to the degree that we become conscious of. See, oftentimes what we do with this thing called spirituality is we do it like a math equation where 7 plus 3 equals, and there's only one answer that's going to ever give. 7 plus 3 equals, if I say 4, Ingy's going to say, boop, boop, ba-doo, wrong number. Like it's the math ain't mathing. But if I say 7 plus 4, erase that, equals, and then I give you the number, how many different ways can you get to that number? So 5 plus 2 equals 7. Let's erase the 5 plus 2 and put the equal and 7. How many different things come before the equal that could possibly give you the 7 now? 8, take away 1. 6 plus 10 minus, like you have an infinite number of ways now that you can get to that. So what does it mean for you to equals, I am that which I am, ever becoming more and more of my true self? What do we need to do? What are we invited to do? How are we invited to show up in a way that makes that manifest? Because a world that works for all is not going to work if we're not working it. Because what are we going to do? We're going to say, oh, the only way we are going to have, in the words of Oppenheimer, if we scare people enough with this massive device of destruction, then war will end. War will never end with the consciousness of death and destruction. I am never going to become a friend with Jay if I have to beat him into friendship. That's never going to work. On the surface, there may be the appearance of, but what that becomes is, I've made him subservient. I've made him afraid. Until the witchcraft part comes into play, which I get turned into a frog, but that's neither here nor there. It's a different conversation, right? But we're looking at things in the world and we are expecting political leaders to be the answer. We are looking at this and this and this as the answer. If God is all there is, and that's what we say, it's what we teach. We believe in God, the living Spirit Almighty, one indestructible, absolute, and self-existent cause. Do we believe that? Because if we believe it, it should be showing up in how we live, move, and have our beingness. If we believe the ultimate goal of life to be a complete eradication or complete emancipation of all discord of every nature, and that this goal is sure to be attained by all. Do we believe that? Because if we do, it should change our behavior. When we're walking, wherever we're walking, we're going down the Glebe Road somewhere, and we're strolling, and we get to an intersection. And the direction I'm going, that light is the same color as my jacket, but I'm going to keep on going. Is that wise? No. And when we get to an intersection, what was the first lesson we were taught? When you get to an intersection, stop and then look both ways. Because we believe that there is the potential, the possibility of being struck by a car. That's why we do it. We don't look both ways hoping to find the magic genie bottle. We don't look both ways to see when the Wicked Witch of the West is going to fly through on her broom. We look both ways because there's a possibility that we could be injured. The belief changes our behavior. If we believe what we say we teach, how is it showing up in our behavior? One of the quotes for this week, it says, where Michael Bernard Beckwith, be for something and against nothing. To which Dr. Holmes says, find me one person who is for something and against nothing, who is redeemed enough not to condemn others out of the burden of his soul, and I will find another Savior, another Jesus, and an exalted human being. Now, to be for and not against. It's a very fine line in there because it's easy for us to get into the land of metaphysical bypass, malpractice, and metaphysical malfeasance. Because it is possible to say this behavior is not effective, but still work with the person. It is still possible, because we talk about being anti this. You shouldn't be anti anything, be for something. But we have anti-stick or Teflon, etc. on, so it does. Firefighters have flame-proof. See, we make it compartmentalized. We do Tupperware theology where it's okay in this realm, but then it doesn't apply here. If God is all there is, then the same laws of spirit, the same divine principles should show up everywhere, should they not? So if that's the case, then rather than, because what I notice that people do is take this, and then the moment Rich comes to me and says, whatever this is about, Ray, I saw this thing on CNN where they were talking about the number of people being sex trafficked, and I want to do something to fight against it. I'm right there with you, 1,000%. 1,000%. But when we, because now I'm going to bypass, when we return the response as, Rich, be for. not against. So how, I hear you, how do I take the word fight out? Or like, I got you. Okay, so firefighters, they're not fighting fires. But wait, follow where it gets convoluted and confusing. So our invitation is to recognize, just like a condemned building, it is not safe for occupancy. There are certain paradigms of thought and certain ways of behaving that are not safe for occupancy. Certain traumas and triggers that we have experienced throughout life that we still look at the condemned relationships, finances, etc., and we know that the current way of operating within this is not safe, but we go in anyway. Our invitation is get rid of the building and erect a new building that serves us better. But we're not going to be able to do that for as long as we somewhere still have this paradigm that says, even though we may not use these words, that we are sinners, that we're broken, that we're weak, that we're not good enough. And I want to say, pause for a moment and check in. When was the last time or the most recent time that you criticized yourself about anything? Criticized yourself about weight, about height, about finances, about burning something. I don't. Why do I always burn the toast? Like whatever it was. What is something where you got into the? Let me try this garment on. This garment of evidence that says I am a screw up of one kind or another. Now, bring into the space that reminds us, but you are God. You are a divine incarnation of the all that is. So now, how do you hold in the same space? Oh, and then bring it together and then move forward from that space. There is nothing that says we are going to, once you reach enlightenment, you will never have to diarrhea again. For enlightenment is the cure for it all. There is nothing that says that. In fact, it says before enlightenment, you got work to do. You get enlightened, and the same work you were doing before, you're going to have to do after. So why do we have this idea that somehow this next workshop, this next class, this next something, this license, this something, this degree, this something, this paycheck, this something will be the answer when we ourselves are the answer? There is nothing that we need to learn that makes us more complete. There is nowhere we need to go that makes us more divine. There is nothing that fills us. And I know we reflect back to the old Jerry Maguire, you complete me. Let that be enough. We are already whole, perfect, and complete. Right now, whether we feel like it or not, we are it. So our invitation to the first song, our invitation is, what does it mean to not simply testify to love, but that everything of our lives becomes a living testimony? Meaning, when you see someone who is authentic and they're lovable and they're loving and they're transparent and they're whatever words we want to use that are on the rubric of click, whatever that is, they don't have to do or say anything special that somehow makes them special. They're simply being themselves. They're simply doing what is theirs to do. Lynn playing music and all angles singing, them doing this it's them expressing who they already are. When we pause and we say, Rich, can you do me a favor and pray with me or pray for me? And that's great. Jen, could you pray with me? That's great. It's part of a process. But what happens when we realize that our lives are our prayer? That the way we say good morning is a prayer. The way we say it is nice to meet you is a prayer. The way we greet a friend that we haven't seen or spoke to in so many years and we chat on Facebook is a prayer. That signing a song because it moves us is a prayer. Then we realize that everything we are doing in our lives, what did Joel Goldsmith say? God expresses God, and that expression appears as you. Your word is the word of God. That's how we create a world that works for all. Your body is the body of God. That's how we create a world that works for all. Your thoughts are God's thoughts. That's how we create a world that works for all. When we step into this space that says there is nothing that is more powerful than an idea whose time has come, and that idea that we are invited into is the idea that says you are a divine incarnation of God. Right now, you are perfect as you are. You are whole, even in the midst of that pain. You are complete, even while feeling incomplete. The paradox of, but our invitation is, how am I invited to step more deeply into this truth? I am that which is, ever becoming more and more of itself as me. And I breathe in that. I walk in that. I live in that, and in that is the power to create a world that works for all. And so it is. Thank you, everybody. Stage.